Hello and welcome to another Kenshi video. Today I'm going to be talking more about my Kenshi system. If you're unaware, for the last few months I've been working on a complete conversion of Kenshi into a tabletop game. I've now completed it and I'm going to be working through the different aspects of the game. I originally wanted to make one huge video going through the entire system, but I got about a third of the way through and it was already going to be several hours long, I predicted, and I wanted to make shorter videos for the time being since I felt it would be a little more digestible and not everybody would be interested in every part of it if you're planning to make your own Kenshi system. So you can use this video both as a guide for the mechanics if you want to use everything I've written, or if you're working on your own system, you can use this as supplementary material or maybe inspiration. So this will be part of a series. I will make videos about all the different parts of my Kenshi game. And this video is on the races. I'll be talking about the mechanics I've written for the different races of the Kenshi world, and I'll also be talking about the lore of each of the races. This video will be part of a series. There will be a video on all the basic mechanics of the game I've created, and eventually I'll cut them all together and there'll be a huge mega video, but that'll be in the future. So if you're interested in seeing more of the game, stick around and you'll be able to catch the next videos when they come out. You can download the game on my itch.io page, which I'll leave in the description. And with that said, let's get into it. Kenshi is a post-apocalyptic world set in a desert and generally arid environment. There's ruins of spacecrafts littered across the world. Some people have described it actually as a post-apocalypse because Kenshi is unlike a lot of other settings. It doesn't take place in a world that is totally ruined and uninhabitable. It is very harsh, but there are societies that have built themselves up. There are new kingdoms, new empires, so it's almost like after the aftermath. And today we're going to be talking about some of the races of that world. So first off, for rolling your race, you roll a d4, and there are 4 options. A 1 makes you a Hiver, 2 makes you a human, 3 a Shek, and 4 a skeleton. And we'll go over each of these as we go through the races in a little more detail. But the basics mechanically of what you're getting for each race. Hivers tend to have boosted skills in crafting, science, research, but you need more water and you tend to have less health on each limb. Humans, you have about average health on each limb. You don't tend to get a lot of boosted skills though, not as many as Hivers, and you use an average amount of water and food. Sheks get a lot of boosted skills, especially in the realm of combat, and they have more limb health, but they require more food than other races. And finally, there's skeletons. Skeletons don't eat food or water, so that's a huge benefit. And they have pretty much double the limb health of any other race. They are probably the best race. But there is one big downside, which is that they can't actually heal damage on their limbs using a normal med kit or by resting. They have to actually find a specialized robotic repair bench because they're a robotic species. Also important note, this is not every race in the world of Kenshi. This is only the ones that are playable in the game. I did add some races if they were kind of a sub-race of an already playable race. So in the current game, you can play as a human, and then there are 2 sub-races, Greenlander and Scorchlander. I've added a few other human types that also exist in the world. I also did that for Hivers. You can play as a Southern Hiver. And I also added the different skeleton models. But I didn't add things, for example, like fishmen, because that race isn't even like in the game at a basic level. All right, so with that said, let's talk about Hivers. If you're rolling up a Hiver, you roll a d10 for what hive you hail from. There's the Western Hive, which you get on a roll of 1 through 6, the Southern Hive, which you get on a roll of 7 through 9, and the Dead Hive, which you get on a roll of 10. And I'll talk a little bit about the lore of each of these before we get into what exactly that means for character options. So the Western Hive is basically a trade power, I'd say. They're ruled by a single queen who gives birth to all the individuals of the hive, much like a bee or ant. All hivers are completely obedient to their queen. They can't really disobey her orders, or at least it's very difficult to do so. You need like really high willpower, basically. And now you're a player character, the one you're going to play as, you will always have that willpower because otherwise you wouldn't be able to play the character. So from each of these hives, you're playing a hiver who's either defective, didn't have that part of his brain where he has to listen to the hive queen, or you just have really high willpower and you broke away. But more commonly, you'll just be defective. And what they basically specialize in is low-cost prosthetic limbs. So like I said, Kenshi is a post-apocalyptic world. There are people losing limbs all the time. There's very dangerous factions all over the place that are trying to cut your limbs off. And there are factions that make very high quality prosthetics to serve that need in this world. But the only people who really have the knowledge to create those things are the skeletons, and they all live in Black Desert City, and it's a huge trek away from anything else, and they don't particularly like the biological races that much, nor are their prices very affordable. So there was basically this niche in the market of this post-apocalyptic world where people needed low-cost prosthetic limbs. And the Western Hive really stepped in to fill that need. Not because of any kind of altruism, but in order to bring prosperity to the hive and to grow their influence and control. So in the actual game, when you meet hivers, they're usually part of a caravan. They'll be carrying goods on the backs of pack animals. They sell things like ration packs, electronic components, that kind of thing. But other merchants also can sell those things in the game. Those aren't too unique. The big thing about the Western Hive is their prosthetic limbs. They have some of the cheapest in the game. They're one of the only early game sources of limbs in Kenshi. So they do serve a pretty big niche there. Next is the Southern Hive. The Southern Hive is similar to the Western Hive. They also have a queen that births all of the individuals, but they also have a mysterious king who's known as sort of a cryptid monster thing, and he also doesn't look much like the other hivers of the South. And this will be sort of a mystery for your players if you're the GM, and your players haven't played Kenshi before. But the king of the South is not a hiver at all. He's some sort of machine being. There's not a ton of answers on why he's there or why he's respected by the Southern Hive, but he seems to leave them alone and eat just about everything else. So the Southern Hivers, rather than specializing in some kind of economic trade, they're more of your typical empire. They have a ton of soldier drones, unlike the Hives, which focus more on worker drones, building villages, conducting trade and whatnot. They're not really trying to like conquer the world. The South is trying to conquer the world. They see all the other races as just like food or biomass, a bit like the Tyranids from 40K, and they are actively invading other regions, trying to expand their influence by killing everybody and eating them up. They do also have hive workers and hive princes as well, so they have administrators and workers and all of that, but they do very much focus on aggression internationally. And finally, we have the Dead Hive. This is more of like a fun kind of main character-y option. The Dead Hive isn't like an official name really in game. It's in the game files, but nobody ever calls it this in the actual game world. The Dead Hive in Kenshi Tabletop refers to the hive that once existed in the Fog Islands. So the Fog Islands are a region of the Kenshi world, which is sort of like many mesas. Think of sort of like the Mexican desert. But it's not warm. At least, I don't think it's warm. I guess you don't really learn much about the climate in various areas of Kenshi, but I always perceived the Fog Islands to be cold. So it's basically this kind of cold desert with all these mesas, and it's completely subsumed by mist, and it gives it sort of a eerie feel. And you need sort of a light source to go through it, like a lantern, which adds to the really spooky vibes. It's one of the cooler areas. And there used to be a hive that lived in the Fog Islands, but for whatever reason, all of the hivers there went totally insane, and they became cannibals, and they've sort of regressed to basically animals. They just attack, kidnap people, and eat them. They don't seem to have a queen anymore, at least not as far as anyone knows. And it's thought that once they're gone, they're all gone, because they have no more queen to produce more hivers. So when the Dead Hive people are all slain, that's it. So they're sort of a temporary threat in the lore of Kenshi. In the actual game, they do respawn. You can destroy their nests, but there's always a small number that will still respawn. So for the Dead Hive, your character has to be a hiver who somehow escaped or was never part of the mass insanity thing, whatever happened with them, which made them the way that they are now. So it could be that you left the hive before any of that happened and you were just a normal defective, like a player character from either of the other hives, or it could be that you escaped whatever doomed them. So with the way I've designed all of these races in my adaptation of Kenshi as a tabletop game, each race basically gives you three things. You get boosted EXP to certain skills, so you level up in them faster. You get some damage resistances, and you get traits, which are the fun part. Traits basically help you design your character, figure out their backstory. You roll them randomly, and they can be things like you hate a certain race, or you are a secret agent of an ancient god, or something like that. And I'll show you just a few of them for each race. So I'm going to go through the Hivers in terms of categories: prince, soldier, worker, princess. But each of the Hiver sub-races, you should know, all have the same benefits. So if you're a Southern Hive soldier, that's the same thing statistics-wise as a Western Hive soldier. In each of these hives, the Hive Queen, or former Hive Queen in the case of the Dead Hive, has defined 3 basic roles for people. There's the worker drones who build things, the soldier drones who fight people, and the Hive princes who administer things and kind of serve as like linchpins for the will of the queen. In addition, I've also added another type of Hiver to this, the Hive Princess. Now, it's unknown how Hivers actually create new hives. Nobody seems to know anything about that in the game, nor is it ever really discussed. The Southern Hive, for example, nobody thinks that the Southern Hive somehow came from the Western Hive. But personally, I think just because of the parallels to bees and ants, that they do have some way of creating new hives. They might just not do it a lot for whatever reason, maybe to avoid competing for resources. So I've added this Hive Princess, and this is a feature of some mods. And what a Hive Princess basically is you look like a Hive Queen, and you may even be able to birth your own Hivers. I thought that would just be kind of cool to put in there, but if you think that's too beyond the pale or not how Hivers should work, then feel free to not use it. The first race we're going to talk about is the Hive Prince. So I'll just be telling you what each race gives you really quickly and rolling a few traits from each so you can see the kinds of things that you can get. First up is Hive Prince. Hive Princes get boosted EXP to Dexterity, Perception, Toughness, Athletics, Field Medic, Science, Lockpicking, Stealth, and Thievery, so a lot of skills, and it's a boost of 20%. And you get a reduction of 20% to Strength and Laboring, because you're supposed to be running things. You're immune to acid damage, and I'll just roll 2 Hive Prince traits right now. It's a D20, so I got a 14 and a 4. My first trait is I eat my own poop to conserve nutrients, which Hivers actually do in the lore of Kenshi. And 4, I was born defective and have always been independent. So this Hiver specifically knows they're defective and has always derived a sort of independence from that. You can easily imagine another Hiver character who might dislike being defective and wish to be normal, but not this character. Next up is Hive Princess. You get a 20% boost to Dexterity, Perception, Toughness, Athletics, Field Medic, Robotics, Science, Lockpicking, and Stealth. And you get reduced DXP to Strength and Laboring. Again, you're supposed to be in control, silly. You're still immune to acid damage. And I'll just roll 2 Hive Princess traits. I got a 14 and a 16. I have yet to pick a name for myself, and I have no interest in becoming a queen. I imagine princesses have to set up a colony and then maybe consume some kind of royal jelly equivalent to eventually become a queen. Next is Hive Soldier. You get a 20% boost to Toughness and Melee Attack, and a penalty of 20% to Perception, Engineering, Field Medic, Robotics, Science, Armorsmithing, Cooking, Laboring, and Weaponsmithing. But it's worth noting that Hive Soldiers also have higher limb health, a lot higher, especially on the head. You're immune to acid damage, and I'll roll 2 traits really quick here. I got a 19 and a 14. Wow, I just keep getting 14s. 19, I'm self-conscious about my head shape. A lot of people make fun of how the Hiver Soldier looks because he's got like a hammerhead. And 14, I'm fascinated by non-Hivers and will ask them ceaseless questions. Most Hivers never leave their home area. This Hiver may have become defective after some kind of head injury, and so he's never been out of his home, and this is the first time he's seeing non-Hivers. Next up is Hive Worker. You get a 20% boost to Dexterity, Toughness, Athletics, Engineering, Stealth, Thievery, Laboring, Farming, and Turrets. And your EXP is 20% reduced to Strength, Science, and Cooking. As with all Hivers, you're immune to acid damage. For my roll, I got a 7 and a 10. So my first trait is I've lost a limb. Let's see which one it is. Looks like I've lost my right leg. That's no good. And I constantly get mistaken for a fogman. Wow, this character is going to have a tough time. And that is the Hivers. I'd like to say thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe, and check out my other videos on the channel. As I said, there's going to be more videos in this series where I'll be covering all the different mechanics I've made for the game, so if you're interested in that, stay tuned for those. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and check out the game in the description below if you're interested. You can download it there and have a look at the core book. Alright, goodbye now.